I'm sure if you've listened to any videos at all, you've heard me talk about when trend red crosses over trend green, it's the start of an uptrend. Now keep in mind, trend red can go into a BOC pattern and not cross over green, and it can take a day or two, 2 or 3 days going up before it even crosses green. And so when it does cross green, I've said oftentimes that's the start of an uptrend. And that's because those movements of trend red climbing up to get to green can be weak. That doesn't mean they are weak, because really a BOC pattern in trend red is the very essence of the start or the bottom of the cycle. It's just that it may not be worth trading. And so that's why I caution you. If you get a BOC higher pattern in the trend red, or you get divergence of some type, then and you'll be able to see that divergence within the first few hours of the day. You can pick up that pattern then if you find it, and buy it long, and then by the end of the day you can make a determination if you want to continue in the trade. The thing that I haven't mentioned as often when I talk about that is the comparison of the price lines, specifically the red and green line. Now I'm going to look at a spot here. I'm going to move the yellow line over to the point at which we have a low. We have right now in where the yellow line is, on the yellow vertical line, we have price red at 8 and price green at 23. So there's a pretty good significance in those two. Red or blue is lowest yet, and so red has not crossed under blue. But you can obviously see that the red is in a low. Price red is in a low angle down, and that's ahead of. If you look at your power 3, you've got your trend red is in a spike down, your power red is in a spike down, and your swing Zion is in a spike down. And so everything is telling us here. Wait a minute, let me move this over to the right spot. Zip Zion is actually in a little bit of a low angle, but Zip Pink is obviously in a bigger low angle down, which would again tell us that it's even a stronger probability with those low angle downs that the next day would be up. If you go to the Zip chart, red and pink again are in low angles, and definitely you see a next day up. But that being said, what I'm trying to point out to you is that you don't see this too often, because everything's in spike downs, or most of it's in, your power 3 is what I'm talking about, are in spike downs, with the exception of swing Zion. And then you can look at swing Zion and see a little bend in it, but when you look at swing pink, then it's real obvious. And then if you glance around, you can see that it is going to go up tomorrow. But on the next day, when it goes up tomorrow, you now have red in a BOC pattern, but it has not gone over the green line. And so technically this is the start of an uptrend, because it's in a BOC pattern. Both your power red and your trend red are in a BOC pattern, and you are also in with swing Zion and swing pink. You're in a BOC pattern. In the Zip chart, you're actually in a red-green one-day twin bottom, which is an upturn the next day, or a trend up or price up the next day. So again, we can see on this day, even though the trend red hasn't crossed over the green, we can see it's going up. Okay, now my main point for this video. On this day right here, you have the red line has crossed over the green line. That's the day of this red doji candle that has a low angle up in your price green, which obviously becomes a bottlenose pattern. And note here also, on this day here we have a full bottlenose and it's continuing to go up. And I'm not going to get into that on this video and explain how or what we would do other than, or wait a minute, I guess I can too, because it's easily explained. Because right now, when red crosses over green, I technically say we're in an uptrend. And because we're lower than 0 and we're lower than the trio lines, I definitely say we're in an uptrend. Because it's going to cross through the trio lines and hopefully go above. We don't know that yet. But the key thing that I want to point out here is that you need to watch the price lines. When the price lines are going up, the price is going up. Now go over to this day right here. The trend is in a low angle top, which says it's going to go down the next day. But the price lines are both low angle ups as the trend red. The next day we're following into that. It's actually, if you look at it real closely, I'll try to expand it a little so you can see better. You can actually see that it gaps up. And you know from your candle theory that when something gaps up, it's likely going to go up. You also know from your candle theory that wherever it opens, when a green candle normally goes down and then goes up all through the day, through the green body, reaches a peak, turns around and comes back down, gives you a tail on both the upper and lower part of the body of the candle. So I say that because all this time during this process, there's at some point you're thinking about pulling the trigger because you've reached the top in your mind. These 4, 5, 6 days, hey, this is the top. You know, price red and green are in a low angle up. Well, it's going to sneak in one more day up, and you may have been able to spot that while you were contemplating pulling the trigger. Maybe you won't. Or maybe you would not be able to. But at the end, what you have here is on the yellow vertical line day, you have price red highest. And that is highest at 131, greens at 128. And you have the crossover on this final on this final day. On the final day, price green's at 134 and price red is at 133. When you have that crossover, that is usually the peak. When they're running high, like over 120, you can get crossovers like down here that tells you it's going to go up. For example, right here on this day, let me move the yellow line back. There's the bottom again. And on this day, red is lowest and red is under, green's the highest. On the next day, we have green at 54 and red at 55. So red is now highest. We have flipped-flopped. We have, I say it's divergence because red was lowest yesterday and now red is highest today. And as a result of that, you can identify that, hey, you got divergence, something is pushing this thing. And what do you get the following day? You get a small gap up, but then it ends and it goes up pretty good, but then there's a battle and you end up with a red doji candle. So however you look at it, that's what you can see. And the point of this whole video is that I wanted to tell you that when the things start going down, previously you've heard me say when trend red turns down, get out. Well, this is the day on the yellow vertical line when this peak had trend red turned down. There and right there it is, but we knew price green was still going up. And it's a logical conclusion. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, because this is a logical conclusion that you might say I'm getting out, and rightly so after all of those days. But you could certainly trade this the following day by getting out on this yellow vertical line day, and then when it opens and you see it gaps up, you can trade it accordingly. So that obviously is up to you, but the key element to this is that I wanted you to to analyze the price lines when you're looking at red and green. When trend red is above green, you're in an uptrend until trend red goes down. That's the basic formula of it. Those are parallel lines. They're lines that run together a lot, and as a result of that, sometimes you can be fooled in the middle of the process by a line moving one way or the other, but you're not going to be fooled by the price lines. And so that's the issue that I wanted to convey on this video. Have fun trading. Think about what you're doing. Analyze those indicators because they will truly tell you what's happening both today and at least the next day. You can't see. Sometimes you can't see out too far, but other times you can. But of course, we do that on weekly charts or monthly charts. So grateful that you are watching the video. I want to thank you. We encourage you to become successful traders. We have a system that we know that if you will follow it, you will become confident at what you're doing and ultimately successful. And that's what the procedures power is all about, because I've given the example before of analyzing, you get 10 patterns you picked up off a scan, and 2 of them go up real strongly, nice green candles, 5 or 6 are small green candles, and a couple are actually red. Well, those 2 green ones are the good conditions, and the other ones are the bad and the poor conditions. And so you take a pattern, you find the good conditions, whatever they are, for that pattern, and then you trade it. So you're trading, every single time you trade, you're trading a high probability trade. That's powerful. And the difference is the high probability trades, because we pick the good conditions, those high probability trades are like 95 or 98%. They're not what you might think of typically when you think of high probability, because some people might say 70% or 80%. But because we hand pick these patterns with good conditions, and we use signals to pick the point in time when we enter that position, the success is very good. And it's obviously different for everybody. I will tell you that it is oftentimes in a direct relationship to how much time you've spent analyzing the system. If you get started on the system and you find a trade that's real easy for you. I mean, when Zip Zion is lowest and going up, it's pretty hard not to be successful. So there's real easy ways to make some short-term money while you're learning the system. And don't be afraid to do that. Also, TradeStation has a simulator. You can use the simulator to determine things about how you're effectively using the indicators. And I really encourage that, because you can, pick out 10 stocks on the simulator on the night before and just mark them down or buy them. If you're offline, then obviously you have to wait. But do things on the simulator. It's a powerful tool, and that's why we're at TradeStation, because they're the best, and we firmly believe that we have the best system on the planet. There isn't anybody out there that we know of that can find gaps before the gap.